Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, Secretary of State Michelle Reagan will join us in studio. And we'll hear from both sides on the concept of a definable and enforceable living wage. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. The U.S. Supreme Court today ruled in favor of a Gilbert church in a legal battle with the city over temporary roadside signs. It was a unanimous decision. Attorneys for the Good News Presbyterian Church claim that Gilbert treated the church services announcements and other temporary signs differently than political signs, which are allowed to be larger in size and stay longer in place. The High Court ruled that Gilbert's sign ordinance was indeed unconstitutional. The National League of Cities, though, says that the decision, quote, wreaks havoc on the ability of local governments to implement sign code regulations. And Glendale filed a motion to allow the city to skip a quarterly payment to the Arizona Coyotes. It's part of Glendale's efforts to end an agreement with the hockey team. The city wants to skip a $3.75 million payment that's due July 1st or put the money in an escrow account. The payment is part of the $15 million the city agreed to pay the Coyotes annually in an arena management and lease agreement. Arizona Secretary of State Michelle Reagan has been involved in a disagreement with the Clean Elections Commission over jurisdiction of enforcement of campaign law violations for certain types of candidates. Here now to talk about that and more is Arizona Secretary of State Michelle Reagan. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me back.
Before we get into all that other stuff, your impressions of the job, is it what you expected? Any surprises, challenges? How's it going?
It's a dream job. And it's everything I expected and then some. So it's a very, very big agency, bigger than I think most people realize. About a $20 million agency, 160 employees, 11 locations around the state. And I'm just loving every minute of it. So
I know that you've talked about improving and updating campaign finance laws. What needs improving? What needs updating?
Well, you know, right when we right before I was sworn in, we were kind of dealt a little blow with the Galassini ruling, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but just that a federal judge basically ruled our definition of political committee unconstitutional. That's kind of pretty much everything the elections division bases pretty much everything on that. And so we had to go to the legislature right when the legislature started. So new legislature, new Secretary of State, definition of political committee null and void.
Yes.
So we had to go to the legislature and ask them to write a new one. And so we basically we were, you know, right in the thick of it with them. So the biggest new thing with campaign finance laws would be the new definition of political committee, which has yet to take effect because new laws haven't taken effect yet.
Indeed. And again, without getting too deep in the weeds, the Attorney General dropped his appeal on this ruling from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals regarding the original definition too vague. I know that the new law is coming into effect, but by dropping the appeal, what does that mean? Because could not the legislature, if the court case continues, you could still get a new definition of a committee, couldn't you?
And yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Again, what was just so important is that we got to the legislature. We were able to find an excellent sponsor to just push it through the way that it seemed that the federal judge was going to agree was constitutional. And again, you know, when you're working with the legislature, you want to make sure things aren't hung on to the bill and added to it that are going to get hung up into the court system. And so we were able to get a clean bill out of there, and something that the Galassini lawyer seemed to like too. So we were a little, again, Attorney General's a new administration as well, so we're all kind of learning the ropes here, and we would like their agreement that this is a good definition of political committee. But I think what's most important is the legislature liked this, the governor signed it, and the judges seem to be happy with this, that it's constitutional. So,
and when we talked earlier about improving and updating, modernizing campaign finance laws, does dark money need to be addressed?
I think the big issue that needs to be addressed is transparency, and so I'm really glad you brought that up, because this was something, as soon as I got into office, or as soon as I was sworn in and I took a look at what the Secretary of State does and what the Secretary of State can do, I got really excited because I thought, wow, I actually get to do something on the issue of transparency. And this is where I was able to start working right away, where I can do something right now on the issue where I couldn't do something in the legislature. You know, in the legislature, you've got to try to pass a bill and get something signed. Same thing with Congress, or, you know, and quite frankly, a lot of the dark money problems are going to have to be solved with the IRS or the federal government. But as Secretary of State, I can work on the problem right now with transparency. And we're working with the Clean Elections Commission on programs, a really big project called the Follow the Money Project. And that's going to be rolling out here pretty soon. We want it in place before the 2016 election. These kind of things aren't picking up a lot of media yet because they're not completed, but we're working on them right now, where you're going to be able to pull up a candidate's name, see exactly who's donated to them. People are going to be able to click, and it's all going to be laid out for them. Government collects a massive amount of information on people. And I was able to see that as soon as I was sworn in and started looking at our campaign finance division, at our elections division. I thought, wow, we already collect huge amounts of information, whether that's right or wrong. You know, already state law, though, what we already collect. What we do is a terrible job of laying it out for people where they can easily digest it and see it.
I was going to ask, though, I mean, it's one thing to say that, you know, the Betterment of Squirrels Corporation wants this candidate to win, and the I Love Puppies candidate wants this candidate, but who's behind those groups? Do you ever, can the transparency go deep enough to find out that, yeah, that's the person behind the I Love Puppies group?
Yeah, I think every state, well, I know every state is struggling with that kind of that Russian nesting doll kind of problem. Yes. of that shell game. I have not found one state that's been able to find that magic bullet. And I don't know that, and there's some states, quite frankly, that don't want to find it because, you know, it's up to those individual legislatures, even if they want to tackle that issue. But as Secretary of State, there's things that I can do right now to solve transparency problems, because even with the data that we already collect, we're not using it properly. And so, again, I decided, I think quite wisely, to say, I'm going to focus on the things that I can work on and actually have an impact on right now. And we're really pleased with the way some of the projects are going. We're going to be coming out with apps. We've got a number of different things that are going to be transferred online that make it more user-friendly for not just for candidates, but for the public as well. All this stuff that we're doing on paper, really? I mean, it's 2015. You
mentioned working with Clean Elections. You've also been very concerned with what you call the jurisdictional reach of Clean Elections, especially when they find a particular group $95,000 for some last-minute ads against Scott Smith regarding his mayoral term right when he was leaving the mayoral. I mean, it was pretty transparent what was going on there, yet you're concerned with Clean Elections going after these guys. What's going on here?
Well, you know, Clean Elections and the Secretary of State's office work together on a number of different projects. They're a player in the elections world, absolutely. Important, the Secretary of State's office is a player as well, and ever since statehood, it's been pretty clear that there's certain government entities that are involved in the campaign and, you know, campaign finance or campaign world. Secretary of State's office, the Attorney General's office, and now we have Clean Elections Commission. The voters voted in. I respect that. But where does the jurisdictional boundaries begin and where do they end? And that's what this intervening in this lawsuit was really about. I don't believe that government gets two bites at the apple. And what I mean by that is a crime may or may not have been committed. And that's for a judge to determine. But how many times and how many government entities can go after that same crime? That's the overall answer that we want, or, you know, the overall question that we want answered. Is it the Secretary of State's office, or is it the Clean Elections Commission?
But some are saying the Clean Elections Commission is the only agency out there going after these kinds of folks, this group in particular, that they went after it when no one else did.
Well, that is a completely false narrative. And again, this intervening in this case was not about protecting legacy fund. It was about asking a judge. We intervened to ask the judge to answer a larger jurisdictional question that we believe needs to be answered going forward. And this was a great opportunity to have that answered. But in this particular case, and that the 30-second sound bite on that is, legacy fund, the Secretary of State Ken Bennett at the time passed this on to Maricopa County Elections, who ruled no crime, basically. An administrative law judge agreed with that. And then the complainant himself, Mayor Scott Smith, voluntarily withdrew his complaint. So we don't even have a victim anymore. And Clean Elections Commission still went ahead. So I respectfully would disagree that this is some crime needing to be, needed to be solved.
So when critics saying in this particular case you are siding with dark money, you say?
Absolutely not. I am asking a judge in this particular case it's an opportunity to intervene and to say who has jurisdiction over this stuff, because what you never want to have is an instance where one government entity says to a group, go right, and another says go left, because what happens? The group doesn't end up having any clear direction. You can't have a system that does that. And so what we're asking the judge to say is basically, who has jurisdiction? We think we know the answer of who that is, but we don't know. And we want the judge to let everybody know so that there's a clear answer by next year's election.
And again, you're asking for the opinion and the ruling of a judge there. Now, there's a state law that candidates have to be notified of last-minute ads, and you have been quoted as, your office has been quoted as saying that you think that that is unconstitutional and that you are not going to enforce this law. First of all, are you not going to enforce this law?
No, we're definitely going to enforce the laws the legislature puts forward. Being a former legislator, nobody respects the role of the legislature more than I do. However, little problem with the article that was written about that, and we won't get into that tonight. But what I will say is that we also have a duty, as our election director has a duty, when he sees something and he's making determinations on complaints, and on these particular complaints, they were all dismissed for various reasons. Most of them were for substantial compliance. They had substantially complied. Mm-hmm. So they were deemed, hey, you've substantially complied. We're not going to pass this along to the Attorney General's office if your notification was 3 hours late. And then that was the case in many of these. But he noticed something and brought it forward to the legal community as a footnote and said, by the way, this is something you may want to take a look at. And said, hey, legal community, hey, election law community and legislature, you may want to next year consider changing this or taking it off the books, because a judge in 2003 said that this is most likely unconstitutional. And so that's kind of a big difference between bringing it forward, which is his probably duty to do as our elections director, and saying this is probably unconstitutional, and saying, we're not going to enforce something, which certainly we're going to enforce the laws of Arizona.
So again, the idea that you would not enforce something because you or your elections director considers this particular law unconstitutional. Again, critics, and it can be argued, that's not your job.
I don't believe it's my job to make law. I believe it's my job to follow the law. I also believe it's our duty as the chief election officer of the state, and also the one who has a big elections division. When they spot something in the law that they believe is unconstitutional, it's absolutely their duty to bring it forward to the legal community.
Indeed, but until the legal community takes action and a ruling is made, you still got to follow.
Yes, I think we would all agree on that. And so, but I don't want my election director or his staff to be afraid to say, hey, legislature, you should look at this, to be afraid to come forward, and if they see things that they don't think are right, to have say people, you're not going to enforce it. He's enforcing the law just fine when things are dismissed for other reasons.
Okay, so a candidate must be notified of last-minute ads.
That's the law right now.
All right. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
It's great to see you. This was a pleasure. I appreciate it.
The Arizona Community Action Association is an organization working to end poverty. Recently, the group received a grant from St. Luke's Health Initiative to design and implement a statewide living wage initiative. Here to discuss the concept of a living wage is Kelly McGowan, Deputy Director of the Arizona Community Action Association, and Tom Jenny of Americans for Prosperity, a grassroots organization that supports free markets. Good to have you both here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Ted. Thank you.
All right, what is Raise Arizona?
Raise Arizona, if I could start by giving you a little bit of context, that currently in Arizona, 1 in 4 jobs is considered low wage. And we know that 40% of people are also considered working poor. And this means folks that are working often 1, 2 jobs, more than 40 hours a week. And so Raise Arizona is really intended to address that issue. And we're calling it a community partnership for living wages. And what we want to do is we want to recruit, certify, recognize, and reward businesses who voluntarily choose to pay their employees a living wage. We also want to ask consumers to really support these businesses with their dollars. So we really feel like in partnership with the business community and consumers across Arizona, we can put a dent in some of those poverty figures.
This idea in general, your thoughts?
As long as it's voluntary, I'd say go for it. My concern is when these things become mandatory and enforced by law, minimum wages, in many cases, minimum wage laws end up hurting the very people that they're intended to help. And that's a big problem. So you end up with people, it doesn't do you much good if you know there's a $15 wage out there if no employer is willing to hire you at that wage.
I want to get back to that in a second here, but the difference between living wage and minimum wage.
Well, a living wage, really, it's going to vary from place to place. So if you live in New York, the living wage is going to be different than here in Phoenix. But at its core, a living wage is the hourly rate that an individual needs to earn to afford their basic expenses without relying on additional public assistance.
So that would be difficult to implement, wouldn't it? I mean, as far as the non-voluntary aspect.
Well, Raise Arizona is really intended to be voluntary. We
Right.
think that's the right approach to take for Arizona. We want to encourage businesses who feel like it's the right model for them at this time to voluntarily pay their employees a living wage.
For those who think that the living wage, the minimum wage, they're smart ideas, higher wages give workers more to spend. How do you respond to that?
That's absolutely true. If all things equal, if an employee is productive at a certain productivity level, and if their employer feels, and if the market rewards that activity at that level, then absolutely, that's how the world gets better, is by rising wages. What we're concerned about is when governments step in and try to set a price floor, try to set a minimum wage. That's when you start seeing economic damage. Right now, 96% of the workers out there in Arizona, hourly workers, are making above the minimum wage, and that's a great thing.
Do you think the idea of, I don't want to get too much into minimum wage here because living wage is what you're talking about, but again, the idea that the forced higher wages or just higher wages in general when they don't come by way of the market lead to layoffs?
We want to work with employers who feel like it's the right model for them at this time. We would never advocate a higher wage at the sake of laying off additional workers. So Raise Arizona is really intended to work with businesses who feel like it's the right time for them to do this on behalf of their business and employees.
You mentioned that different regions would probably have different living wages.
Sure.
Who decides, how do you focus that? I mean, do you go rural, urban, state, county?
The method that we're using in Raise Arizona is based off of fair market rental rates. And so you take the average rental rate in a locality. For this case, for Maricopa County, it's $14.13 an hour. And it's commonly cited that you shouldn't spend more than 30% of your income on your housing costs. So we look at the wage that someone would need to make to spend 30% on their housing and then have an additional 70% for utilities, transportation, healthcare, childcare, things of that nature. And that fair market rental rate is going to vary based on where you live.
Again, does that make sense to you?
Again, if it's voluntary, if this is an experiment, I say go for it, try it. Employers, in fact, all the time are experimenting with compensation levels for their employees, trying to figure out if I give them a little more, will they work harder? If I give them a little bit less, will they hang on? Will I lose them? This is happening all the time, and as long as it's voluntary and we're not talking about a government-imposed wage that lays people off unnecessarily, then it doesn't sound like a bad thing.
Should different areas, though, have different living wages? Does it start to get confusing? Does it start to be an uneven playing field and no one quite knows what's up and what's down?
Well, the world's incredibly complex, so it's going to be trial and error, I think, with these guys, as it is with if we're talking frankly, every employer is out there trying to figure out, hey, is the compensation level I'm awarding right now adequate for people to keep me from losing these people?
That aspect of unpredictability, is that a factor? Is that a concern?
Can you ask the question again?
Well, basically unpredictability in terms of what the living wage is going to be next year, what the living wage is in the adjacent county, what the living wage is when you're dealing with a company and trying to work some sort of deal with someone who's in a different state.
Sure. And obviously the living wage is not going to be a set rate, so it's going to increase as cost of living increase. So, I mean, we believe that especially small businesses in Arizona understand what their workers are going through in the communities that they live, so that the difference in wages based on where you live, we don't really see as a problem.
Okay, so if there's nothing other than recognition and those sorts of things, how much will businesses really do?
Well, we hope that businesses will do a lot, but what we see when we talk to small businesses is that their employees are really part of their family, and they want them to be successful. And so we really hope that, and we're seeing at the national level that this model is really starting to work for folks national with a footprint in Arizona. We have Quick Trip, average annual salary is $40,000 a year plus benefits. We see that Aetna just came out in January with a $16 across the board. Base rate is $16 an hour for folks. And so we think that this national model that's gaining traction is something that is worth trying here in Arizona.
And Ted,
yes, please.
I am a little bit concerned. And again, if it's voluntary and they want to experiment, let's go for it. But I am concerned a little bit because we have a lot of people in the hospitality industry and some of our service industries. And if you look at hospitality in Arizona, they're making about $14 an hour. And that's, by the way, the average wage in that industry. The median wage is quite a bit lower than that. Mm-hmm. And again, this is voluntary, so I don't think there's any harm in trying. But if this was a case of a mandatory government-imposed $15 wage in Arizona, I think you'd see a big dislocation.
The idea
a lot of people thrown out of work.
Right. The idea of a minimum wage, and again, I'm getting back to the minimum wage because that's a little more concrete and something I think you're a little more against, as opposed to this idea of recognizing businesses that are doing well by way of the living wage. The minimum wage, though, should there be a minimum wage? Do you think there should be one?
I think one of the great things right now is that the minimum wage is so low that it's not causing a lot of economic damage right now. So right now, as I pointed out before, only about 4% of Arizona hourly workers are at or below the minimum wage. And that's a very good thing, that population is quite small. Are there some bad effects of that for that population or the people who can't get jobs? Mm-hmm. Is it bad for low-skilled workers who are trying to get jobs? I think you could make an argument that it is. And I think most economists would look at that and say, yeah, probably at the margin there are kids, young people, low-skilled workers who are not getting jobs who might want them.
I ask that because every time there's a talk about raising the minimum wage, whether it's a lot or a little, the same bunch of folks come out and say this is going to be disastrous, and yet we seem to be always raising the minimum wage, and so far we're not underwater, getting close to it. But I mean, we're not. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it seems it's like every time we hear this, the same negative arguments come up, but we seem to make it okay.
Right now, the minimum wage is so low that it impacts right now about according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics right now, about 24,000 workers at the minimum wage in Arizona and about 34,000 below. We've got about 1.4 million hourly employees in Arizona. So at these levels, the minimum wage is not hurting a lot of people. I believe it's hurting people, but it's not hurting a lot of people. If we start to head up to 15, the Congressional Budget Office looked at a $10.10 minimum wage proposal, and they believe that would throw out of work about 500,000 people nationally. If you go to $15, $20, as they start to go up, that damage is going to get quite a bit bigger.
Real quickly, just a few seconds left. Last thing we need to know about Raise Arizona and living wage.
We really believe that it's great for Arizona, it's great for communities, and great for businesses. And if businesses are interested, we'd love to hear from them.
All right, very good. Good to have you here. Good to have you both here. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom.
Friday on Arizona Horizon, it's a Journalists Roundtable. We'll discuss the firing of the state's chief economist, and we will also look at the state delaying a controversial new abortion law. That's it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thanks for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.